Welcome to another episode of Running the Wasatch 100. Every time I start this, I'm either like tickled or super excited. But today, I think I'm plumb elated for my guest. This is somebody, one of the people I respect most in the ultra running community and running world. Very good guy, good person. And he has run Wasatch 3 times, and in my view has one of the coolest stories around Wasatch, and we can get into that a little bit. But I'm trying to fluff him up because, you know, he needs a fluffer, because he's a guy that will not, he's not out there on social media. He's not, you know, puffing himself up out there. So I figured we needed a puff piece for Mr. Brandon Dase. Brandon,
yes,
welcome to Running the Wasatch 100.
Thank you.
How you doing this morning?
Doing great. It's a fine morning.
Great.
To be out.
It's good to have you here. Brandon, first question right off the top.
Okay.
Can you tell us something that you nailed with your first Wasatch 100?
With my first one, I would have to say that I nailed the training block. That's probably the best block I've ever ran in preparation for something. So I trained really, really well.
Now I'm gonna jump in here. I usually don't do this, but because of what I said,
yeah,
that Brandon's not gonna fluff and puff himself. I've been watching folks train for Wasatch 100. Say Wasatch 100 5 times really fast.
Wasatch 100.
No, Wasatch finish.
5 times really
Wasatch
fast.
finish. Wasatch finish.
Wasatch finish.
Wasatch finish.
Yeah, I already messed it up.
Okay, so Brandon put in the most impressive training cycle that I have ever seen leading into Wasatch. 100-mile weeks, 15, 20K vert, week after week after week. So anyway, Brandon, I just stole your thunder.
Okay.
Something that you nailed at your first Wasatch. The training cycle.
Yes.
What about that do you think went so well for you?
I think it was, I went into it really with an intention to ramp into it. I've had times where I've entered a block and I've kind of went out too hard for the start of a block, but for that one, I started in a good spot, and then as I was ramping, it just kind of naturally, you know, snowball rolling down the hill. So it got really, really big, but it felt good. I was sleeping good. I was eating good. Everything was kind of synced up for a while until towards the end of it. Probably got a little out of balance, but I think sometimes that's important too. If you're chasing something big, you're probably going to get out of balance. And I was just, the volume at the end was really big, so I probably let some responsibility type stuff go while I was pouring into it that last little bit.
All right, Brandon, what's something in your first Wasatch that was kind of a fail that you look back on and after the race it was like, wow, I did not do this very well, and it was something you failed at and something that you've learned that you've incorporated now in the rest of your ultra running career?
Probably the biggest misstep I made was with course recon. I made an effort to run pretty much all parts of the course except for the start. The logic was it's the start, so it's probably the best mark. It's in the daytime, and there would be people around. And I went off course with 5 other guys right after the water stop at mile 10 or 11, we went up the ridge instead of going down. And so ran out 3.5 miles on this dirt road and didn't see any flags for a long time, so knew we were off course. The group I was with, they elected to continue forward and try and connect in, and I had poured over rules, and you know, inexperienced guy, but the rules said that if you go off course, you're supposed to go back to the point that you went off course and then continue. So that's what I did, which added 7 miles onto the race. And
I'm going to give some perspective also. You finished that, what was your time? 25?
26:50.
26:50. So he still was a 26:50 finisher on his first Wasatch. And this was after several miles off course, and then kind of a mind screw. Maybe speak about that, how you felt after and what that did to your race mentally.
So that was the hard part. You know, you build up, have a great cycle, and you're ready to run, and then it all gets turned on its head really fast if you do something like that. And I was trying to reconcile it quickly in the moment as it was happening. I did call my wife because she was crewing. I just said, hey, I'm gonna be really late to Big Mountain. I went off course. I'm pretty upset. You know, she kind of gentled me down. Just keep moving, you know, everything's good. So I tried to do that as I was running back to the spot where I went off. And when I got back there, there was a steady stream of people going through there. Someone had initially pulled the flag. They had fixed it, corrected it, so there was the post with the ribbons in it. There was a steady stream of people, and when I saw the people, I just got really, really angry.
I was probably in there.
So it was, yeah. And then after that, you know, the rest, honestly, the rest of the day was just, I was mad. So I was started running too hard to try and make up time or get back to where I thought I should be, and then I'd blow up.
Yeah, and I think what probably made it more challenging, I mean, Brandon had big goals for the race.
Yeah.
He's really fit.
Yeah.
And, you know, here you go from the front of the pack to when he comes back in. And I think that year, what year was that, Brandon?
17.
17.
Yep.
Can't remember my time, but when Brandon passed me, and I was pretty surprised to see him, wow, it was way down there. So you had probably gone back to the back of the pack, right?
Pretty close. When I got to Bountiful B, when I finally got there, they asked me like, hey, what are you doing? Like, are you okay? Are you hurt? Did something happen? Because, you know, some of your buddies are asking where you're at. We expected you through here faster. And so I asked him, I said, do you have any idea where I'm at, place-wise? And looked at the clipboard, and they said, probably like 150. And then I was just pissed again, right? Like, so,
yeah.
And then every aid that I went to, people would ask, and so I had to keep saying, I went off course, I went off course, I went off course.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like,
that's so
all day long, you know?
Yeah.
So
I'd
be like, I'm gonna drop, you know, it was just all that mind stuff was just
Yeah, that's so. Do your recon, folks. And also, just a tip. I think if you don't see a flag, I mean, they're typically pretty good with the flagging.
Yes.
If you don't see one for a mile, get very suspicious of where you are. So
later in the race, probably not as you'll have the reflectors at night, and they may be like farther out, but you have the reflectors, and so it's just make sure in the daytime for sure that you're seeing those things. So.
Brandon, Mr. Dase. Next question. Can I call you Mr. Dase?
Yeah, that's fine.
Or Mr. Puffed and Fluffed? Piece of advice for a friend or someone you know gets into Wasatch and says, Brandon, what should I do? What's the one piece of advice that comes to mind? I'm just doing trail work, by the way.
Yeah, that's good. Slow down, I think that's what I would tell myself. And anybody else that's jumping in, slow down and be patient. It's
love it, especially coming from this guy, because let me tell you, most of the time in his training, he does not slow down. So that says something. Can you tell me what the why do you say that? Like, what's the reasoning behind slowing down, especially for someone like you who's really fast, normally runs really fast?
It's a long day. You're going to be out there a long time for a 100-miler, and a lot of people they just run too hard at the start, and then later on, when you should be moving well, your legs are gone, or some people will say their stomach went. It's all related to how fast you're running. So that first 100K, it should be conversational, it should be fun. You should be in a good spot to set yourself up for later.
So our topic today is keeping it simple, okay? Brandon and I had a discussion yesterday, and he was talking about how his first Wasatch, he was getting so much information. And I was thinking about these videos too. It's like almost like a paralysis by analysis, right? You're getting so much information that you almost don't even know what to do. And so Brandon's advice, he was like, you got to keep it simple. So Brandon, what does that mean, keeping it simple? Can you give us some tips there?
Sure. So keeping it simple means what you know is that you're going to run the Wasatch 100. I assume if you're watching this, you're in the race. So you need to train for the race. Somebody once told me to respect the race enough to train properly for it. And so you want to train on like terrain. Wasatch has some really crappy trails, which is good. That's part of what makes it Wasatch. It's hard. It can be warm that day. So do your training on like terrain. And then food and calories, keep it simple again. Like on your training all throughout the summer, you should be testing and eating and drinking and finding the things that work. So that on race day, you're just eating and drinking what's worked all summer.
And in terms of training in the heat, yeah. You mentioned training on the terrain. You're going to be running Wasatch.
Yeah.
What about the heat?
The heat, you need to run in the heat. That's something that I've done really good the last few years. I do a lot of my summer runs after work, starting at 4:30, 5:30. It can be 100 degrees in South Utah County, and just get out in it.
Here's a true story. A few years ago at Wasatch, there was someone that got pulled off the course at DNF, and they were not doing well. And I know the sweeper, And my friend, the sweeper, Greg McGiff, you're probably not watching this, but if you are, you know the story. And they asked the runner, you know, what they had been training in. Had they been doing like trails? And the answer was they had been using an elliptical at home all summer long to train for Wasatch.
Yeah, probably
don't
not
do
the
that.
best idea.
Yeah, don't
Better
do
than
that.
doing nothing, for sure.
Right. Don't train on, you know, in the AC.
Yeah. And with the heat, people will complain about the heat, but it's really an external factor. The weather does not matter at all, because every single person in the race has to run in the same weather. So go run in the heat, get yourself ready for it, do it all summer. Don't just put on layers and run in it the last 2 weeks. Just get accustomed to how your body feels in the warmth.
SWAS.
SWAS.
The word of the day. The word of the morning. SWAS. Okay, so keeping it simple, I'm just gonna give Brandon some rapid fire questions and some of the topics that we've already discussed and his take on some different things. So, first question, Brandon, what do you do for nutrition at the Wasatch 100?
So nutrition, what I've figured out over a lot of trial and error, for me, I target about right around 300 calories. It can be plus or minus an hour. Combination of drink mix and gels. Simple sugars, I think, are king. So
it's very similar to what I do.
Yep.
And so do you take what's off the table, or do you prepare your own?
I take my own. Just
okay.
Stuff that I've been using all year.
Okay.
Because then it's already proven.
Yes.
Right?
Good.
And then I target, depending on different parts of the day, because it can be warmer than others, I target 16 to 20 ounces of water or fluid an hour. And that's, yeah.
And I would say when you're
pretty much
between sessions and lambs, you're going to want to up that quite a bit. For me, I would.
Yep.
But next question, Brandon.
Yeah.
What do you use? Do you use bottles, or do you use a reservoir? And kind of give us, you know, what you use from a pack standpoint. Why?
Okay. I use the Solomon Advanced Skin 5. Pretty much for everything in the day. I like bottles the best. 2 up front and 1 in the back. So if it's a long stretch, like you were talking about, but this last year at Wasatch, I did have a 50-ounce bladder, and I started with that empty. It was already in my pack, and then when I got to Bountiful Bee, I just had them fill it full of ice cubes. So there was no fluid in it, wasn't drinking out of it.
That's a great idea.
Just using it for cooling, and then I still had my bottles up front.
Dude, I love that idea.
Yeah.
Real quick, what I do is I also do bottles. I do 2 up front.
Yeah.
I do for the hot sections of Wasatch. Okay, this is only Wasatch specific. I'll put a 3rd bottle in the back of my vest, and then I do a handheld also, because I need a lot of water. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And I do that I pick up the handheld at Bountiful Bee and take it all the way to Lambs.
There you go. Yeah, I like, then at sessions, when I got to sessions, I had them refill the bladder with the ice cubes, but then put the water in it too, so that I could drink out of the reservoir as well. Now
Oh, I like that. I like that, dude. That's a great idea. I might try that this year.
Because it really helped keep me nice and cool. Not that it was like, it wasn't an extremely hot year this year, or this last year, but it still gets warm in the day. So, and after they have that at sessions, you know, I've got the water in the bladder now. You've got, it's a long section now to Big Mountain. It's 11 miles. So you have to leave sessions like ready for a long section.
And just to give some perspective for me,
yeah.
It's a couple of hours,
yeah.
At least. I don't know what your time is, and you know, but it's gonna take you 2 to 3 hours
yeah.
Through that section, and it is getting brutally hot.
Yep.
No aid station.
Yeah. There used to be one in between there, it's gone. So now you have 11 miles. And when I got to Big Mountain, I did the same thing. 2 bottles, reservoir with ice and full of water. Because then you have to go 9 miles now, all the way down to the road for Alexander Springs, which is longer than that used to be as well. And that one is fully exposed in the heat.
In my opinion, that's the worst section of the course. And I love the race committee. You guys are amazing, but that change, the reroute, puts you now on that pipeline trail,
really
which
tough.
is the worst, one of the worst spots on the whole course. And it's hot for an extra, I was out there an extra 45 minutes.
Okay,
and I was not ready. I'm ready for that. And I came into Lambs super dehydrated, and I was nauseated from Lambs all the way to Rock Springs. I attribute that to not being prepared for the reroute.
There you go. There you go. Yep. And that from Alexander Springs, that double track you're talking about, that's the hardest part of the day for me usually.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
The later stages too. That's really hard from Pulling to Rock Springs is always really tough for me too. But you're just in that heat baking in. So if you can take care of yourself through those long stretches, when you hit Lambs, you can be in a really good place.
Hey, should we go summit?
Yeah.
Dude, look at that.
Oh.
We need to summit that, dude.
Yeah, let's summit that.
We need to summit that. Okay, more rapid fire questions. Brandon,
yeah.
Poles, yes or no?
Yes.
And where do you take them from?
So I have my poles from start to finish. I know that's not super popular with a lot of people. I carry the Lecky poles, and I've got a little homemade waist belt that my training partner made me. So I'll use poles on the ups, I'll run the flats and the downs, or shuffle those.
And so you're using poles on all the climbs?
All of it.
And so are you continually breaking them down and putting them back up, or?
Sometimes I'll just flip them up. Like if I've got my poles here, I'm trying to do a demo, I'll do this thing and kind of toss them and catch them in the middle, and then I can run with them, or I'll put them in one hand or the other hand. If it's a long section where there's a long downhill, like from I believe Big Mountain, and you run across that ridge and down to Alexander, I did put them away for that. Didn't have them in my hands. Yeah, I carry them the whole way.
All right, Brandon, something you do that's a little unorthodox, or maybe that most people do not do at Wasatch.
Besides carrying poles the whole time?
Yeah, well, actually, I think a lot of people do that,
okay.
But not at front of the packers like you.
So
I think that's a little more rare.
Okay.
But something you do that most people don't, and at Wasatch, and why?
Okay, so I get rid of my vest later in the race. So when the sun starts to go down and It starts cooling off. About the time that most people change into their night clothes. And by that I mean you put on a shirt or a jacket or, you know, your hat, whatever it is, and your gloves. I get rid of my vest.
So on the course, where is that on the course?
For me,
Yeah.
this last year it was at Brighton.
So you dropped your vest at Brighton.
Yeah. Yep.
I have never heard that before.
At Franklin Basin.
Brandon, why do you drop your vest at Wasatch?
Well, for me, I've been carrying a vest for 60, 70 miles. It's had a bladder in it, it's had 2 bottles in it, got gels and everything else that's piled up over the day. If you pull off your pack at that point and you hold it, it's pretty heavy. So later in the race, when it cools off, especially, I like to take the vest off. It's such a relief. Feels way better because now I'm unencumbered. And then I switched to a belt. So my belt has a Kogula light in the front. It's really bright. Behind that little magnet that holds the light in place, in the front pocket I just put one 17-ounce Solomon bottle there, and then I've got gels here and some drink mix and an iPod on the other side. I still run with the nano wired headphones. So,
dude, this is interesting. I mean, I like the logic behind it. I really do.
yeah.
Maybe something I might try at some point. So, I really think that's a good one, dude.
It's cool enough. My opinion, it's cool enough at night that you really don't need a bunch of extra water.
You do.
So really, that one bottle is enough.
So with taking off the vest,
Yeah.
what else is it doing for you?
Well, it's just one bottle like that could make some people nervous. But you figure you go into the aid station, if you drink while you're there, drink your fill, and then you have a bottle to get you to the next one, you shouldn't need any more than that. So it's light, I can move better, my shoulders feel a lot better from not carrying that pack, and then I can just run.
Dude, you have almost convinced me. I'm serious. Because I do not drink as much from Brighton to the finish.
Yeah. Nobody does.
Huh, this is very interesting.
It's all security.
I may try this, dude.
Okay.
This is two things. 2 nuggets from Dase. All right, so course specific. Lambs Canyon to the finish.
Okay.
What are some things you would tell a newcomer about that section?
That's a lot of ground to cover, right? But the big one is when you leave Lambs to Scott's is 16 miles. Lambs to Brighton is just over 20, right? But Lambs to Scott's in particular, it's pretty much a 16-mile climb. There's no significant downhill in there. There's one into Elbow Fork, but it's garbage. It's hard anyway. So you've got a 16-mile climb there. You have to be patient and just keep moving forward is the best thing through that piece. Scott's, even when you get to Scott's, you're gonna feel miserable because you're up high and you've been climbing forever. But then you've got that nice downhill into Brighton. You've got people probably for your crew waiting for you there. Another nugget I'll give you is if you have a crew at Brighton, have them set up a little bit, like a chair, whatever, with all the stuff that you need in the parking lot. Get in there, get your stuff changed, get all your stuff ready that you need. and then
Hey there.
get out of there.
Yeah, I will say that Brighton is a trap.
It is.
It is for where you're at in the race, and you got your crew there.
Yep.
They've got a really good grill. It's warm. It's inviting. It's like that place. It's like that great and spacious building. It's so inviting.
It's honestly a terrible place. So the reason I say get out of there, when you're ready to go, then walk up to the lodge, peek your head in the door. Do not go in there because of all the things that Scott just said. It's warm and there's happy people in there. You don't need any of that. So
what about the toothbrush?
No.
Mark, I love you, but
peek your head in and say whatever your number is in, and then say whatever your number is out, and close the door and leave.
yeah, that takes some discipline. I'm going to add a few things for that section. First, I think the trails on that section are the best of the course.
They are.
They're great trails. The views normally are amazing, but for most of us, it's in the dark. For Brandon and fast folks, it's not. But don't try to DNF at Scott's Pass aid station. They don't let you DNF there. I've tried, and they can't come pick you up. Now we're going to talk about Brighton to the finish. This is going to be some quick fire answers. In my opinion, is the hardest part of the course by far. For one, it's the stage of the race you're at, but also there's so many terrible downhills. There's so many hills. You got the dive and the plunge. You got Earth's torture chamber. Brandon, what are your thoughts on the last section of the course, Brighton to the finish?
So I agree with most everything you said there. Terrible downhills. There's a lot of I have a special love for Earths myself. But the other thing to consider is when you leave the sign is a point supreme, right?
Yep, point supreme.
So don't kiss the sign. The sign is gross. So don't do that.
I disagree.
But
I'm going to say French, the sign. Place your tongue on the sign, and then you're going to get DNA from like 300 different people.
When you leave the sign, if you've taken really good care of yourself, which you're still going to have 70 miles on your legs, but if you've done good, you've got 30 miles left, and there's only like 3,000 feet left. So your climbing is like, yes, you have some rollers, and yes, there are a couple of little poppers, but the hard climbing of the day is done. So if you have legs there, you can move really well. I just want to say that, you know.
I'm glad you did, because I always view that section as, it always seems like way more than 3,000 feet, but
there's not a lot there left.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got 20 to Scott's, 20K, and then, you know.
Yeah.
So leave the sign. You can run a lot of that, and especially from Pot Hollow in now.
So you don't even peck. You don't even peck the sign.
No.
Okay. Okay. No. Sorry. I from Pot Hollow.
I did the first year, and because of the year I had the first year, I've never touched the sign again.
All right. We'll talk about that. From Pot Hollow, I cut you off.
Oh, Pot Hollow Inn. You don't have a lot of that dirt road anymore that climbs up and rolls to Stanton's, so you can run if you've got the legs. A lot of that, or all of that. That's where I made up all my time last year.
All right, Brandon, another tip for Wasatch. Anything that you found that you could think would be really helpful?
Well, we've talked about, you know, running fast or trying to achieve goals, but I think one thing I've learned with Wasatch, the goal for the day really should be to cross the finish line. So you get a finish at Wasatch, you've done something really big, and it's awesome. So the time is going to be what it's going to be, but the experience and getting the finish is what it's all about. So I would just say keep moving forward, enjoy it, and get that finish. There's nothing like it.
One of the things I love about the Wasatch 100 is all of the success stories. And I'm gonna have Brandon tell one of his now. And as an outsider watching it, it was something that made me incredibly happy and happy for him. On his third Wasatch, he finally got that cheetah buckle, sub 24. And I want Brandon to talk about that. What happened and what that was like to get the cheetah.
So the race really, it went really well. I trained all summer with my buddy Tyler, like a lot of training. So we started the race together, and we ran all the way to Lambs, step by step. Didn't plan it that way, it just worked out. So really it felt like a normal training run. We stayed really mellow, you know, drank plenty, ate plenty, everything was really good. Got into Lambs, and when we left Lambs, he started feeling really good, and I wasn't feeling the best. So he bid me a fond farewell, and I watched him disappear up the road. I had a really hard section from Lambs to Big Water, so I started having some pretty major doubts. A lot of that part I wanted to run, I couldn't. So the mind wheels started spinning, and I thought I was getting pretty far behind. When I finally got to Big Water, I was freezing. The sun was still out, but it was cold. A nice lady made me some arm sleeves out of socks that probably saved my day. And when I got to Scott's, it still felt terrible. I had switched from gels and drink mix to candy and water to try and change it up or trigger a shift. After I left Scott's, I started to get a little bit of it, but still just felt terrible. So I had planned to drop at Brighton. I had rehearsed my dropping speech to my crew and everything. And when I got in there, my training partner and best friend just asked me what I was even thinking when I said I wanted to stop, and gave me some much needed encouragement and a pep talk, and ended up throwing on his stuff and leaving Brighton with me unplanned. And Phil Lowry had once told me, if you wanted to finish sub 24,
Data nerd.
yeah, you need to leave Brighton by 8:45 p.m. If you don't leave there by 8:45, you're not gonna make it.
Sub 24. And
Yeah.
Phil had crunched all these numbers, and that was the data.
Had a big spreadsheet. It was awesome. Still useful. And so when I came into Brighton, it was 9:20, and so that was part of my give up.
Thanks a lot, Phil.
That I was way over time. We left Brighton. Ian and I left Brighton at 9:26, and just tried to get in a really good groove, and had some ups and downs there between Brighton and the finish, but we got into got to Ant Knolls, and Tyler was there, hadn't seen him since lambs. And so he was feeling down. I was back up at that point. And so I went ahead that time. And we just kind of moved as good as we could through herbs and the dive and the plunge and all that. When we got into Pot Hollow, really started moving well and running. Still didn't think it was going to be quite possible, but Ian was convinced it was going to happen.
And then you ran some amazing splits.
Yeah.
Gotta go check out Brandon Dase's splits to the finish from Pot Hollow.
Yeah.
And what happened, Brandon?
So, Pot Hollow, Stanton, we ran every step. Ran pretty fast, I thought. And when we left Stanton, got about 20 meters out of the aid station and heard the cowbell again. And turned around and there was a headlamp there just approaching super fast. And it was Tyler again. And so from Stanton in, I think we were an hour and 44 minutes from Stanton to the finish. But Ian just kind of screamed at us and we push-pulled each other the rest of the way in. We got to Decker at 4:08, and I didn't think it was possible, but we ran a 48-minute split to the finish there. Snuck in at 23:56 and nailed the buckle. And it made it a little more special to have my brothers that I've trained with so much over the years there. So,
love it.
Yeah.
Dude. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
That's the story. Now, get ready and go make your own story this year.
Yes.
Any last words, Brandon?
If I can be of any assistance, let me know. I'd love watching people break barriers and crush goals. And I'd love to be of service if needed.
This guy knows what he's doing, so if you need some help, reach out. Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.